Hello, welcome to Capital Sensei. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the most powerful and influential books on thinking and decision-making ever assembled. Poor Charlie's Almanack, the collected wisdom of Charlie Munger. We'll explore his core ideas, like the latticework of mental models, the art of inversion, and his profound breakdown of the 25 psychological tendencies that cause us to make terrible, irrational mistakes. This isn't just about investing. It's a blueprint for being less foolish in every aspect of your life. Whenever we can, we try to answer questions left in the comments. We've found that the best insights often come from the real-world experiences of our viewers. So please, as we go through this, share your own stories or any questions you might have. It helps everyone learn and build a community of sharper thinkers. So who is this Charlie Munger character? For decades, he was the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, the legendary investment conglomerate. He was Warren Buffett's indispensable partner, the man Buffett called his abominable no-man. While Buffett is famous for his folksy charm, Munger was known for his blunt, razor-sharp intellect and his absolute intolerance for foolishness, especially his own. He passed away in late 2023 at the age of 99, leaving behind a legacy of wisdom. The book, Poor Charlie's Almanack, isn't a traditional chapter-by-chapter narrative. Instead, it's a collection of his speeches, essays, and comments from Berkshire Hathaway meetings, all woven together. The title itself is a tribute to Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanack, which offered practical wisdom to the common person. Munger's version does the same, but for the modern world of business, investing, and life. The absolute cornerstone of Munger's entire philosophy is an idea he calls the latticework of mental models. Now, what on earth does that mean? Imagine you have a toolbox. If that toolbox only contains a hammer, you'll start to think you can solve every problem by whacking it. A leaky faucet? Whack it. A flat tire? Whack it. You see the problem? You become a one-trick pony, and most of life's complex problems can't be solved with one tool. A mental model is simply a concept or framework from a major academic discipline that helps you understand the world. Munger's big argument is that you can't just learn things in isolated academic silos. To truly be wise, you need to collect the big, powerful ideas from all the important fields: physics, biology, psychology, mathematics, engineering, history, and so on. You then hang these models on an imaginary latticework in your head. When a new problem comes along, you don't just reach for your favorite hammer. Instead, you run the problem through this latticework of different models. You look at it from a psychological perspective, a mathematical perspective, a historical perspective. This multidisciplinary approach gives you a full, three-dimensional view of reality that a specialist stuck in their single discipline could never see. Let's make this practical. Take a model from engineering, redundancy, or the backup system. Engineers build bridges with far more support than they theoretically need. Why? Because things fail. Unexpected stresses occur. Having a backup system, a margin of safety, is crucial. You can apply this directly to your personal finances. Your emergency fund is a redundancy model. It's a backup system for when life throws you a curveball, like a job loss or a medical bill. It's simple, but it's a powerful model, lifted straight from engineering. Or consider a model from physics: critical mass. In nuclear physics, you need a certain amount of fissile material, a critical mass, to start a self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction. Below that amount, nothing happens. Above it, you get a massive release of energy. This is a perfect model for understanding network effects in business. A social media platform is useless with 10 users, but once it hits a critical mass of millions of users, its value explodes. creating a self-sustaining reaction where new users join because all their friends are already there. Biology offers some of the most potent models. Think about evolution by natural selection. Organisms that are best adapted to their environment survive and reproduce, while others die off. This is exactly how business works. Companies that can't adapt to changing technology, consumer tastes, or competitive pressures go bankrupt. They are selected out of the ecosystem. Blockbuster Video failed to adapt to the new environment of streaming, and Netflix, a more adapted species, took its place. It's brutal, but it's a fundamental model of how the world works. Then there's mathematics, and the most powerful model of all, compound interest. Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Munger and Buffett have built their entire empire on it. It's the idea of earning returns on your returns. It starts slow, almost invisibly, but over time, it creates an explosive, exponential curve. A small amount of money, invested wisely and left alone for decades, can grow into a fortune. It's the ultimate argument for starting to invest early, no matter how small the amount. So the goal is to build this toolbox, this latticework in your head. Munger was famous for being a learning machine, constantly reading across a vast range of subjects. He wasn't doing it for fun, though he certainly enjoyed it. He was doing it to collect more tools for his toolbox, to make himself a better thinker and a better investor. He believed that 80 to 90% of the time, you could get the big ideas from a field by just reading one or two of the best introductory books. You don't need a PhD in physics. You just need to understand the concept of critical mass. Now, once you have these models, you need a way to use them effectively. This brings us to Munger's second great principle: invert, always invert. This is a beautifully simple but profoundly effective mental trick. He got the idea from the great mathematician Carl Jacobi, who said, "Man muss immer umkehren," which means one must always turn back, or invert. Instead of asking how to achieve a goal, you ask the opposite question. For example, instead of asking, "How can my business be successful?" you ask, "What could absolutely destroy my business?" Then you make a list of all the things that would guarantee failure. Terrible customer service, a shoddy product, going into massive debt, ignoring new technology, hiring dishonest people. Once you have that list, your job is simple. Just avoid doing those things. It's often easier to avoid stupidity than it is to achieve brilliance. Let's apply this to investing. Instead of asking, "How can I find the next great stock that will go up 10 times?" you invert and ask, "What kind of investments are guaranteed to make me lose money?" Well, you'd probably lose money by investing in a business you don't understand, paying a ridiculously high price for a stock, investing in a dying industry, or using a lot of borrowed money. By identifying and avoiding these pitfalls, you automatically improve your odds of success. Munger famously said, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there." It's a bit morbid, but it's a perfect summary of the principle. Figure out what causes failure and avoid it. This applies to your career, your relationships, your health, everything. Want to live a happy life? First, figure out what would guarantee a miserable life: drug addiction, envy, resentment, unreliability. And then steer clear of that behavior at all costs. This brings us to what is perhaps the heart of the book and Munger's most detailed contribution: his talk on the psychology of human misjudgment. Munger believed that if you don't understand basic psychology, you are like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. You're gonna get destroyed. He synthesized his knowledge into a checklist of 25 standard cognitive biases, or psychological tendencies that warp our thinking and lead to terrible decisions. We don't have time to go through all 25 in exhaustive detail, but let's touch on some of the most powerful ones. The first one he lists is the reward and punishment super response tendency. This is the big one. It simply states that people are overwhelmingly driven by incentives. As Munger says, "Show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome." This is the most reliable predictor of human behavior. He tells a classic story about FedEx. In its early days, the company was having a terrible time getting packages sorted and planes out on time for its overnight delivery service. They tried everything, pleading, moral suasion, nothing worked. The night shift workers were paid by the hour. What was their incentive? To work slowly and clock more hours. So, some clever person at FedEx changed the system. They started paying the workers per shift, with the rule that they could go home as soon as all the packages for the night were sorted. What happened? The planes started leaving on time every single night. The incentives were aligned with the desired outcome. This tendency is everywhere. If a financial advisor is paid a commission to sell you a certain mutual fund, what is their incentive? It's to sell you that fund, whether it's good for you or not. Understanding the incentives at play is like having a superpower for navigating the world. Always ask, what are the incentives here? Next up is the liking and loving tendency. We are wired to ignore the faults of people and things we like. We automatically trust them more, believe what they say, and favor their products. This is why companies spend billions on celebrity endorsements. You like the famous actor, so you feel good about the car they're driving. In investing, this can lead you to buy stock in a company simply because you love its products, without doing any real analysis of its financial health or valuation. The flip side of this is the disliking and hating tendency. We distort facts to fit our hatred. We ignore any virtues in people or things we dislike. Think about modern politics. People on one side are often completely unable to see any good in the ideas or people on the other side. This bias shuts down rational thought and turns everything into a tribal us versus them battle. Then there's the doubt avoidance tendency. Our brains don't like uncertainty. It's uncomfortable. So, we have a tendency to jump to a conclusion as quickly as possible, just to resolve the doubt. This is often what leads to snap judgments. Once we've made that first quick decision, another bias kicks in. The inconsistency avoidance tendency. We are reluctant to change. Our first conclusion becomes cemented in our minds, and we resist new information that contradicts it. We want to appear consistent both to others and to ourselves. This is why first impressions are so powerful, and why it's so hard to change someone's mind, especially on deeply held beliefs. Munger points to Ben Franklin, who developed a method to counteract this. Before making a big decision, Franklin would take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and list all the pros on one side and all the cons on the other. This forced him to slow down, avoid a snap judgment, and consider all the evidence before his brain could lock into one conclusion. One of the most powerful and dangerous tendencies is social proof. We are herd animals. We have a deep-seated tendency to think and act like those around us. If everyone is buying a certain stock and it's going up, we feel a powerful urge to jump on board. We assume that if so many other people are doing it, they must know something we don't. This is the psychological engine that drives speculative bubbles, from the Dutch tulip mania in the 1600s to the dot-com bust in 2000. To combat this, you need a strong inner scorecard. You need to do your own thinking and have the conviction to stand apart from the crowd when you believe the crowd is being foolish. As Buffett says, you must be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy only when others are fearful. This is much easier said than done, because the pull of the herd is incredibly strong. Closely related is the authority misinfluence tendency. We are taught from birth to obey authority figures. Parents, teachers, bosses, doctors. This is generally a good thing for a functioning society. But it can go horribly wrong. People will follow orders from a legitimate-seeming authority figure, even when those orders are clearly wrong or immoral. Munger often cites the famous Milgram experiment from the 1960s, where ordinary people were willing to administer what they thought were painful, even lethal, electric shocks to another person, simply because a scientist in a lab coat told them to. In the world of finance, this means people will blindly follow the stock tips of a famous guru on television, without doing any of their own research. The guru is the authority figure, and our brains tend to shut off critical thought in their presence. Always question authority, not with disrespect, but with a healthy dose of independent thought. Let's talk about one that really hits home for investors: the Deprival super-reaction tendency. This is another term for what psychologists call loss aversion. The key insight is that the pain of losing something is psychologically far more powerful than the pleasure of gaining the equivalent amount. Losing $100 feels much worse than finding $100 feels good. You can see this in the stock market all the time. An investor buys a stock at $50. It drops to $30. They refuse to sell because they don't want to realize the loss, even if the company's prospects have clearly deteriorated. Their fear of making the loss official, of admitting they were wrong, overpowers the rational decision to sell and move the money to a better opportunity. This tendency, combined with the inconsistency avoidance tendency, is a recipe for financial disaster. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and maybe a bit complicated, so stick with me. Munger's biggest contribution to psychology is his concept of the Laala Palooa effect. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know. A Laala Palooa, in Munger's terms, is what happens when several of these psychological tendencies act together in the same direction at the same time. The result isn't just additive, it's a massive, multiplicative, runaway effect. It's a perfect storm of irrationality. The classic example is an open outcry auction for a valuable piece of art. First, you have social proof. You see other sophisticated-looking people bidding, which validates the idea that the art is valuable. Then you have Deprival super-reaction. As you start bidding, you feel a sense of ownership, and the idea of someone else getting your painting becomes unbearable. Reciprocity kicks in. The auctioneer is being nice to you, calling you by name. Scarcity is at play. It's a one-of-a-kind painting. All these forces combine to create a frenzy where people bid far, far more than the object is rationally worth. Understanding Laala Palooa effects is critical for understanding extreme human behavior, like stock market crashes, religious cults, or mob violence. When you see a situation spiraling out of control, your first question should be, which psychological biases are ganging up here to create this Laala Palooa? It's one of the most useful tools Munger provides. So how do we fight all these built-in mental errors? Munger's prescription is twofold. First, you must learn the tendencies you can't guard against an enemy you don't know exists. Second, you must develop the habit of using a checklist. Before making any important decision, run through the list of these 25 tendencies and check to see if one or more of them is clouding your judgment. It's what airline pilots do before every flight, and it's what a rational decision maker should do before committing capital or making a major life choice. This leads us to another of Munger's famous concepts, the circle of competence. This idea is simple, but crucial. You don't have to be an expert on every single company or every industry in the world. In fact, it's impossible. The key to success is to know the boundaries of your own knowledge. You need to draw a circle around the things you understand really well and stay within that circle. As Buffett has said, the size of the circle is not the most important thing. What's vital is how well you define the perimeter. Munger and Buffett made their fortune in businesses like insurance, candy, and soft drinks, businesses they could understand deeply. They famously avoided technology stocks during the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, not because they knew the companies would fail, but because they knew they didn't understand them. The industry was outside their circle of competence. This requires a great deal of intellectual humility. You have to be comfortable saying, "I don't know." In a world that rewards people for pretending to have all the answers, admitting ignorance is a rare and powerful strength. It keeps you from making big mistakes in areas where you are just guessing. Your job as an investor is not to have an opinion on everything. It's to have a well-founded opinion on a few things and to act only when an outstanding opportunity appears within that small circle. And what do you do when one of those great opportunities appears? This brings us to Munger's philosophy on activity, which he sometimes calls sit-on-your-ass investing. Wall Street is built on activity. The brokers, the television commentators, the fund managers, their incentive is to get you to do something, to trade, to buy, to sell, because that's how they get paid. Munger's approach is the exact opposite. He believed that for the average investor, the best course of action is almost always inaction. True wealth is not built by frantic trading. It's built by finding a handful of truly outstanding businesses, companies with durable competitive advantages and honest, able management, buying them at a fair price, and then holding them for a very, very long time, decades even. This allows the magic of compounding to work its wonders. Munger used the analogy of a batter in baseball. The stock market is a game where you can stand at the plate and watch thousands of pitches go by. Bad pitches, mediocre pitches, pitches you don't understand. And you don't have to swing. There are no called strikes. You can wait patiently for weeks, months, or even years until the perfect pitch comes along. Right in your sweet spot. And only then do you swing. And you swing hard. This requires immense patience, a quality that is in very short supply in the modern financial world. Ultimately, all of these ideas, the latticework of models, inversion, the psychology of misjudgment, the circle of competence, and patience, are not just separate tricks. They are all part of a single, coherent worldview. It's a worldview based on a relentless commitment to rationality and a deep understanding of how the world really works, not how you wish it worked. It's about recognizing that we are all susceptible to foolishness and building mental routines to counteract our own worst instincts. The overarching message of Poor Charlie's Almanack is that the key to a successful life, not just a successful investment portfolio, is to go to bed every night a little wiser than you were when you woke up. It's about being a perpetual learning machine. It's about building your own latticework of mental models, being ruthlessly honest about your own biases and limitations, and having the discipline to act only when the odds are overwhelmingly in your favor. Tough standard to live up to. But as Charlie Munger's own remarkable life demonstrated, it's a path that leads to extraordinary results.